Well, we're lucky enough to be here with Herd of Buffalo. This is an Iroquois Nation, Mohawk tribe, Turtle clan. Now, the unique part about this man is he got to grow up off the reservation. So he's still Indian, still the soul of an Indian, but he has grown up in,
Durham, North Carolina, and
okay,
I've
and
been there my
your
whole life.
English name is
Ian O'Brien,
Ian O'Brien, and your Indian name is soon to be
Herd of Buffalo.
Herd of Buffalo, and that's out of great respect, I guess. How you got that name was
The way I got that name is my dad, who is man who loves turkeys, I believe. Um, the way I got that name is that he always has this joke that I am the loudest one in our family. That even though I'm pretty soft spoken and I don't talk a lot, like when I do talk, I'm very loud. I very naturally project very uh, prominently and loudly. And also just generally when I go places, like I end up like clomping around, like I run places, and I'm very loud. So like I was the source of many a sleepless night for mom and dad when I refused to sleep, and I would basically just walk around in my room being very loud. So heard of Buffalo.
yeah. It's all right if stealth is not in your forte. So a few questions I have for you. Is
Not
that
one
all
of my
right?
talents.
Yeah. And so how far have you traveled away from Durham in one lifetime?
How far? I would say probably Italy when I was very, very young. I don't think I was even a year old. I think I was 1 year old, exactly. And I hadn't even begun to walk yet. Um, but yeah, so my parents took me on a trip to Italy. And apparently on that trip, at some point, I got very, very sick. And I was vomiting everywhere. And
From food poisoning or from
I think it might
Ear
have just been
infection.
traveling or ear
I think it might have
infection?
just been like travel sickness or something like that because I was still very young. So um,
Now, how old are you now?
I'm 20 years old.
Now, if you being on this planet for 20 years, what has Mother Nature, Mother Earth taught you in that time?
That's a good question. As far as Mother Nature,
Or Mother Earth?
um, I would say, I mean, if the way that I'm taking that question is like, what has the world in general taught me,
Hmm.
I'd say that the way I sort of interpret that is one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, and one of the things I like living my life by is kind of leave things better than how you found it. And that doesn't just apply like locationally or environmentally, but like also like um, so kind of like I don't like being hateful or angry. I don't like being hateful or angry towards people because like 9 times out of 10 it's just like circumstances and misunderstandings. Um, and I think there's very very few people on the planet who deserve to be hated or like you know so whenever I try to interact with people I always try to be very kind and very nice to them, and I try to basically leave a lot of interactions with like more happiness in the world than when I left when I got there. So it's important to me with most of my friendships to like make sure they're all okay. Most of my relationships like make sure everyone's doing all right. And I've had many a friend come to me. It's like, hey, you always offer all this support. You always offer all this support and like shoulder to cry on, an ear for someone to listen to, and like you never ask for anything in return except for friendship. And like, why do you do that? And I'm just like, well, I just as long as you're happy, I'm happy because like if more people in the world are more happy, then that's just better for the world in general. It's net benefit.
Now, you've been on this earth for 20 whole years. What advice do you have for us other creatures out here? struggling along.
other creatures. So like other people who are
What,
gonna live 20 years.
no,
Just
everybody. What
everybody.
advice do you have for us?
For just people in general. Well, I mean that leave it better than you found it lesson, I'd say, is pretty important for, I'd say, a lot of people to learn nowadays, because we kind of live in a time where there are a lot of people who basically only look out for themselves, or them and their own mostly. And because of that, there are a lot of people who don't like each other, just hate each other almost naturally, because they think that they're being persecuted in some way. So I think it is always better to just like learn who someone is, and learn, you know, what they're like before you make any rash or harsh judgments. And I don't like hating people because um, it's hard to explain. Um, it's like a negative energy that I don't like having in my soul, because like hating someone does actually kind of take effort, and it takes a lot more effort than many people might think. But like having that kind of anger and spite sort of hold up in you isn't, um, it's not sustainable, at least over long term periods. So like you know, I don't have any sort of like strong negative feelings for many people, except people who I think are an active menace to society, and that's about it.
Okay. Now these next two questions are optional.
Okay.
What has been the best moment of your life?
Best moment of my life. That's a difficult one. It's hard. Mm. I have a lot that I can think of. Some of them are a little private,
Okay.
so I'm not. But
Do one that's not quite so private.
um, sure. I think I've got a good one. I think one of my favorite memories is, so when I was somewhere around 16, I was 16 or 17. I was in a relationship with a girl who, in all honesty, did not value me at all and was very abusive and manipulative. And there was a very big problem in the relationship, which was giving me a lot of grief, which was that um, she was cheating on me very openly with another guy. And because this was my first relationship, and I felt very strongly about it, and like I didn't want it to go away. So I thought that I just had to do whatever I could to maintain it. So and the reason she said that her cheating on me was okay was because, oh, I'm polyamorous, so that makes it totally okay because I want to be with more than one person. And obviously that's bullshit, because that's not how it works at all. But that was my first experience with, that was my first time even hearing about polyamory, and I wanted to keep this girl really badly, and I hadn't really yet been broken out of the rose-colored glasses. So yeah, so for a while after that, I was feeling incredibly awful and shitty because like I was feeling neglected and abused and like alone. Um, and whenever my dad has kind of been my emotional sort of support pillar for probably my whole life, and he's kind of the person who had built a lot of I'd say my persona on, because like I think he's a very wonderful and kind and pleasant man who like just has a wonderful outlook on life, and he's very gentle and kind and like very free with his emotions. Um, and he's always encouraged me to like just be myself and to like live my life as happily as I can as possible. So whenever I had problems, I usually went to him about it. So um, in this midst of me feeling incredibly awful and horrible, he basically comes up to me and he says, hey, let's go take a drive. Let's go to one of your favorite restaurants and let's just talk about, why you're feeling so bad. And like that was a not when when I was like, oh man, high school was terrible, and I had to do that a lot. There were a lot of times where I would basically melt down and I didn't know what to do, and I basically needed to talk to sort out my emotions. And there were a lot of times where Dad would come to me and like he would basically offer me like a drive out to like a nice restaurant that he knew I liked. Um, and like I know that's like a lot of different things, but like that generally, and especially when after after my girlfriend started cheating on me, um, that one especially is probably one of my best memories because like it was it felt very nice to know that I was loved and supported no matter what from just like it felt nice to know like even when I was at my lowest of lows that like someone still was there for me. So yeah.
So you've grown up off the reservation,
Yeah.
but you're still part Indian. How do you feel about being native?
um I feel pride in it. I feel pride in my native culture, in my native genetics, even though I know that there is a stark minority of how much of me that is actually Native American. But I am interested in the culture, and I am like interested in that sort of part of my identity, and I do really sort of admire a lot of like Native American traditions for just being very how should I say just I guess good in general. Like a lot of it is just about being good to others and not being shitty to people. And I'd say that is it's in so many words it's a simple philosophy that like just works. And I like the many ways in Native culture that it sort of accumulates or is applied. And I think it's very interesting, and I would like to know more about it. But I also um, don't want to like since I am like mostly non-native. I don't. I also kind of don't want to feel like I'm sort of like brigading in on a culture that isn't actually mine, even though it sort of is. It's been complicated feelings because I've never even been on a reservation, and I sort of mentioned earlier, like that herd of buffaloes name isn't even like my official name. That's just sort of a joke that my dad has used for me for years. But I do kind of like the name. Something I did think of a little while ago is that like herd of buffalo, that kind of thing was really important to Native Americans, and buffaloes themselves are like very interesting creatures. They're very communal. They travel in herds. They're part of the earth, kind of, and I kind of like that idea because I think it fits me semi well, I guess. Apart from just being loud.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, of
I
course.
appreciate the time.
Yeah.